What are good activism theme songs?
Yo, I don't know. Activism!
Na 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 na.
Activism!
Okay.
Anyways, hi guys. This is Selena, and Chitika again.
Hello!
Recurring guest and, co-host, I guess, technically.
Sure.
You're
I'll
here
take it.
a lot of the episodes so far, and probably
All
in
of
the
them
future.
so far?
It's because you're here. You're in, like, studio. You're always like, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hello.
Anyway, so, hello again. This is episode 3, I believe, of the podcast Designing Activism. The format's pretty free form, so this time we're just gonna pick another topic and we're gonna discuss it, I guess, right? Something that we've been talking about recently is, just like advocism. That should be a new word. Activism, through AIAS, since obviously that's the org that we're most familiar with, and that's the birthplace of this podcast in a lot of ways. I don't know. Where do you want to start?
I mean, I guess, like, just to contextualize what we were thinking, a part of the goal of this podcast, and jump in if I'm, like, not quite being accurate about it, but part of the goal is to talk about, like, actionable types of advocacy, and so, you know, we would be pretty hypocritical if we just kind of, like, sat on a floor
and complain
and
about
just talked about
advocacy.
things. Yeah. So that would be a little meta and not exactly fruitful. So the goal is, at least every once in a while, to try to come up with or just talk about existing ways, really, that all of us can be more effective advocates and kind of, like, channel the energy of whatever conversations we have into action. So today we were going to focus heavily just on what you can do as an AIS member, or, like, what opportunities or platforms are accessible to you, which we started to touch upon a little bit in the first episode.
Yeah, way back. Sorry about that audio, by the way. It was just not a good location.
Yeah, round one.
Yeah, round one.
But it's good stuff. So those of you who haven't listened to it and are just joining us, feel free to check out the past couple episodes.
Yeah, the first one was about advocacy platforms, I guess, and we interviewed a couple people that, other than us, obviously, that have different levels and different scales of advocacy efforts. And then the second episode, which was the last one, was
about social media as a platform.
Social media as a platform, or not as a platform, and being critical of ourselves in that sort of situation. So.
And speaking of the last episode, I have a couple of corrections to issue.
Yeah, go ahead.
What did I do? Right. So if you listen to the episode, you'll hear me say marital law at one point, and I meant to say martial law. Those two are very different things. Funny. Very, very different. And I've always just had a lot of trouble with the two words. I don't understand why, but my bad. I do know the difference. And then I also definitely mispronounced and switched a couple of letters in the French president's name.
How do you say it actually?
Are you gonna play a?
No. Keep going.
Oh, is it pronounced Macron?
Macron.
It's Macron is his last name, and he's a president. I just have a feeling I called him the prime minister.
I don't remember.
The French prime minister is Edouard Philippe. And the French president is Emmanuel Macron.
Oh, there's two.
Yes, there's a president and a prime minister. Don't make this worse for us.
I'm sorry. I really don't know anything about French politics.
But yeah, that just kind of taps into, you know, we're just like all you guys, and we're just talking about what we know and what we don't know. So feel free to tell us when we make mistakes. But also, you know, use that as inspiration to be like, hey, you don't have to know the French president's name to be an activist. It's fine. Yeah. You can learn.
Look it up.
Yeah, probably look it up before you put it on Spotify.
Or other platforms.
Yeah.
It'll be on iTunes soon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And on iTunes, I guess. Okay, cool. Yeah. Good to know.
Anyways, so I guess we'll just jump in about talking about, I guess, AIAS-focused advocacy efforts, since that's a bit more specific in terms of, like, platforms. So, like, one of my main, 3 topics about, the idea of empty activism is, understanding your channels and, like, choosing the right one to go through. So I guess there's a lot of examples of what we're going to talk about in, like, how many people go through the right kind of channels for certain things, right? So I guess the first one is committees, maybe?
Yeah. That's like an easy and direct one. That is kind of how I got started personally.
Yeah, you know a lot more about this than I do, so.
Well, so, I mean, a lot of you know, if not all of you, honestly, that AIAS has a kind of number of national committees and task forces.
By the way, AIAS is the American Institute of Architecture.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, this is a pretty, like,
I'm assuming that anyone that's
podcast.
Listening to this is a friend of ours that we made listen.
For now, at least. If not, welcome.
Yeah. Hello! Thanks for joining the list. Oh, how many listeners do we have?
I'd rather not say.
Many.
There
we are in double digits.
We are.
That's not a lie. So thank you to all our unique listeners who have joined us on Spotify.
And other platforms.
And other platforms soon. Anyway,
it's on YouTube too, but yeah. Anyways, so task forces and committees.
Right, and so the number of them are standing committees, so the governance committee, the finance committee, membership committee. There's 5. I listed 3. The other 2 are the Freedom by Design Advisory Group and what did I say? Oh, finance, membership, governance, Freedom by Design.
I don't remember. You would know way more about this than I would.
Oh my god, I can't remember the 5th one. Okay, there's a 5th one. It'll come to me. And then the task forces change, but they get revamped kind of every year, but they're similar. Like there's like idea. A logic, or there's some areas that they focus on. So
at least in the past 3 years, they followed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the extent that we've kind of been familiar with them. So a couple years ago, there was an advocacy task force, and it has existed for a long time. So that's kind of that's when I learned about it and became part of it. And then last year, the advocacy task force was split into 3. Health and wellness, equity and diversity, and resilience. And this year, those 3 task forces have come back, but the resilience task force has been expanded
really?
Yeah, it's now called the resiliency and sustainability task force.
Yeah, I don't.
So we can't use the posters from last year.
Just change the name.
No, they're like printed and sitting in my room.
Oh.
Yeah, they're like 6 feet long. It's not good.
Oh my god.
It's like a photo booth back.
Anyway.
So obviously that's a really good place to get involved, and I think and of course, like, you should reach out to other people who've been on task forces, who can attest to this. But it's a really good place to kind of figure out what those actionable means are, because by being on a task force, you're already doing something ideally.
Yeah, I mean, well, maybe we should explain what each task force is tasked to do, or like committees are tasked to do. Like in the beginning of the year, essentially, and I might be getting this a little bit wrong, but they essentially are what's it called? Not tasked, but charged with like specific duties or things to carry out throughout the year, and deliverables. So throughout the year, the committees meet sometimes monthly, sometimes more often, and with that committee, they create a solution, and a lot of the times also like create actual materials to get out.
At the very least, you typically put together some sort of document as a task force.
Well, give an example of what you did like last year or something.
So last year I was actually co-chair of the resiliency task force, and it was a really important year for AIAS in general and just architectural education, because the NAB review forum happened, and it happens once every 5 years, I want to say.
I genuinely don't remember.
Okay, while Selena fact checks me.
Do you want me to actually check?
Yeah.
What's it called?
So I don't have to issue a correction next time. NAB ARF.
Okay, keep going.
So the accreditation review forum happens every, I think, 5 years. And so the most recent one was last year. The work for it was like beginning last year. Yeah. And so we the forum was actually earlier, like in the second half of this year, but the work leading up to the forum was happening from like last July to this past July. So the task force that was like 2018 to 2019 was doing work in order to prepare for the review forum that happened earlier this year in 2019. I hope that makes sense.
My internet's not working.
That's sorry. Okay. I know I'm correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So it happened in like literally just a little while ago, and there's the implementation is like currently happening, and so NAB is actually going to release updates to its accreditation requirements early 2020, which includes some things that we will talk about today. But just jump another step back. The NAB is the National Architectural Accreditation Board, and it's one of the 5 organizations that kind of regulate the profession and education of architecture.
One of the 5 collaterals.
Yeah. So they're called collateral organizations. AIAS is one of them.
Yeah.
NAB is another one, which is why AIAS and NAB kind of had a big relationship when it came to this review forum, because essentially at the forum you discuss what are the requirements for architecture schools to be accredited, which means...
as a professional degree.
Right, yeah. So basically their programs get recognition, right? And NAB decides who gets accredited or recognized as having a professional degree.
Right.
And that's important in terms of, you need a recognized degree to get your license and be able to practice. Excuse me. So on and so forth.
Yeah, there's a whole process.
Yeah. So the key thing is that the task forces were a really important source of information for the ARF, because we were reaching out to the larger student population and also kind of internally doing a lot of work as representatives of our chapters and kind of subgroups in the student body to determine what are the priorities for this review forum. And basically, in simple words, like, we were the people who were sitting and kind of deciding what recommendations AIAS is going to make to NAB to say, hey, these things are important to change in terms of the requirements for accreditation. So simply put, we were
recognizing the student voice in the education.
Yeah, and we were directly affecting how programs will be recognized or not recognized in the near future.
So it's really significant impact in a lot of ways.
And you kind of got to participate in that by being on the task force that year. And so typically there are a lot of larger scale initiatives that will ultimately kind of rely on the task forces as, like, primary sources of information.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that join task forces, like, looking to find some sort of advocacy avenue, and a lot of people have been really happy, including you. Like, you've found a lot of,
because it gives you like a constructive to-do list, and then you can focus on being effective rather than always having to step back and think, oh, is this even like the right issue to tap into? Like, am I doing this and using the right channels, and so on and so forth.
It's something that we talked about a little bit in the first episode, but it's like, you're supporting and you're pushing forward an idea that you supported, but it's also pushing forward an idea that other people have supported as like a highly voted upon issue, or like highly talked about issue. So, I mean, that's like one of the biggest ways I think that you can say that AIAS has advocacy, tangible advocacy efforts, because they've kind of tapped into the existing conversations. So as like a member of a chapter, you might not feel ready to be like, oh my god, this is the next big thing, like, we have to move in whatever direction, and kind of feel prepared to tackle that, or even have the kind of agency to do that. But it makes sense. It is easier, that's what I was trying to say, as a starting point to just participate in an existing conversation. So rather than try to... It's like the same logic almost of, you would go work at a firm for a little bit before opening yours. Oh, yeah. You get experience, kind of.
Right. And so you rely on the infrastructure of, like, more influential people.
You also learn a lot more.
Exactly. And then once you have the, like, internal infrastructure, or, like, the ability to actually do those things, then you go out and do them on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with, of course, just participating in a group and kind of being part of that. Like,
collaboration's a huge part of, like...
Yeah, so everybody doesn't have to go out and, like, do their own thing all the time.
You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
So...
But I guess, like, one of the intimidating things can be, I'm passionate about making positive change and, like, having positive impact on the people and places around me, but I don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
And so a place to start is a task force.
A task force.
And it doesn't even have to be the AIAS national task forces, because, you know, both, I mean, it's both a good and an unfortunate kind of thing, but you can only have so many people on a task force.
Well, that too. And I mean, it's not forever. Like, it's only 1 year.
Right.
Yeah. Like, so for the people that are graduating, you know, obviously they don't have access to this sort of stuff. But they have the similar kind of committees in AIA, as far as I know, at least. Yeah. They have task forces. Advocacy is a really big part of those. Mm-hmm. I actually don't know. I think it depends on the chapter that you're actually a part of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
everything
on an AIA task force too, which I keep forgetting. But in that case, it's more about, like, representing the student kind of experience.
Or the young professionals.
Yeah. And so you will play different roles in, like, different situations, but it's just important to be, like, reaching out for those opportunities. So, in terms of practical, actionable takeaways, obviously this year the task forces are filled up and in full... Swing, thank you. But first of all, a lot of them will do presentations and updates at Forum in December in Toronto. Yeah. So, you know, find out, like, who's on a task force. All of those names are on the AIS website. Reach out to those people. Obviously, they're really involved and happy to talk about what kind of work they're doing. Big important thing is almost every task force will rely on surveys at some point to collect feedback from students, and it can be really challenging to get people to fill those out, because
surveys, there's a thing going on with surveys. I think it's dying, honestly.
I'm pretty sure.
I haven't seen them being used in as high frequency as I used to. Yeah. And there's obviously a reason for that. People don't fill them out anymore.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the last Google form we sent out at our AIS chapter got exactly 0 responses.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's impossible to do it.
Was that last year? Was that my year?
No, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it got 0 responses, so, you know. Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
I mean, it just talks about a changing, you know, language in terms of communication.
Yeah, and of course, you know, when people put a form together, like, we can be better about making them shorter and, like, not being
that's a whole other,
you know, that's a whole other thing.
Conversation.
But try to take some time to answer those surveys, promote them at your own chapter. I mean, if you think about it at the scale of, you know, like, even your own chapter, if your board has, like, 5 people, if you make everyone on your board fill it out,
that's 5 people.
That's a lot of responses. Yeah. And if multiplied by, like, how many chapters are there in the Northeast Quad? Like 50 something?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's like over 200 responses for a survey, which is, sure,
way more than
membership
0.
is like 5,000 people, but it's something. It's better than 20 people responding. So, it's important to participate kind of at the most grassroots level of things too. So when you get a survey, they're not necessarily fun to fill out, but try to. And obviously, on the other hand, if you're part of a group that's making a survey, then try to do something that's not a survey. Yeah. At Instagram polls.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways to... Maybe that could be a whole other topic, like ways to enact advocacy.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get to that another time.
7, 8 episode something somewhere.
Look forward to
Christmas special.
Oh my god, are we gonna do a Christmas special?
I don't know, that's too far for me to think about.
Yeah. Anyway, so another example, I guess, of, I don't know, are they a task force, the studio culture policy project? They're a project.
Yeah, and like they're tapping into each of the task forces. So each of the task forces this year, and standing committees, all of them, are charged with like learning and teaching culture policy specific deliverables. So we have to develop recommendations for...
Yeah, I was going to get into that.
Yeah. Is there anything we wanted to say in general about like participating in task forces, and then we can dive into studio culture?
Participating... I mean, I think it's it's a good step, like we've already said.
Yeah. And it's one of those things of, like, again, I think the important takeaway here is that you don't have to be on a task force to, like, help the task force be productive.
Yeah.
We're coming up with Forum in, like, a couple short months, so hopefully you listen to this before Forum, and you're like, hey, I should go to the presentation.
And if not, then I hope you went to the presentation.
If you're listening to this, just listen to this at some point. If you're listening to this in 2023, we hope
go to the next forum.
Yes, go to the 2023 one.
Yeah.
God knows where we'll be.
Wow. Oof. Anyways, no, I also think this relates to every kind of activism or any sort of effort at all, really. It's, you get as much out of it as you put in. So if you're really, really passionate about something, then really great things are going to happen with task force. Because that's just the place that you do it, in my opinion. So we were going to talk about task forces first, and then we're going to dive into, like, the Studio Culture Policy Project, because I think that specifically has really good examples of actionable
and just activism, like everybody doing things.
Yeah, everyone's right now. It's a very ongoing, very not fast paced, but very, like, consistently paced effort. At least as far as I can tell, and it's really, like, one of the main topics at hand. Even at the NAB ARF, I think that's one of their main positions, right? Yeah. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about what it is, I guess. Or
just, like, what studio culture and stuff, maybe.
Well, actually, you know what? I reached out to some AIAS members, and I got some
responses on your Google form.
No, not a Google form, a Slack message, although not everyone responds to that either. But I reached out to 2 people in particular, and then they gave me a lot of insight on how they're approaching the topic. So the first one, let me just bring it up.
Before we dive in, do we want to just say, like, what studio culture, what's the policy?
Well, it's part of what
okay, cool. Okay.
Scott Cornelius from Oklahoma State University.
Who was on the Resiliency Task Force last year. So guess what, guys? Things lead to other things.
Yeah, no, I reached out to Scott specifically because he is heading the project, I think, with Sarah Curry.
National President.
National lovely Madam President.
Madam.
Sorry. So I reached out to him specifically because he has a lot of insight on what actually is going on. And also, like, examples of maybe how he's done it. So I'm just going to play a real quick audio clip.
Oh, wow.
I know. We're really stepping up
We're getting really
production.
fancy. Can I reveal who our inspiration is? Or at least mine?
You can. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Chitika got really excited about audio clips.
I feel like people are going to hear me and then be like, oh, of course everybody listened to this podcast because, like, they started in 2016. But I'm a new and huge fan of My Favorite Murder featuring Karen Kilgraf.
You should know this way more
Georgia
than I do.
Hardstark. Yeah. That's their names.
Yeah.
Anyway, Karen and Georgia are awesome. And I just thought it was really fun how they talk about, like, pretty intense things in a really conversational way. They also sometimes, at least in their early episodes, I'm very early on, but they made some mistakes and they were like, hey, we don't know everything.
Like marital law?
No, not that bad, but yeah. And there was a third thing. Oh, they also have a great opening theme song, which is also... And, number 4, they collect, what's it called? Testimonies from people. And so they play these audio clips like we're about to do. So without further ado, Scott Cornelius.
All right. Well, he's just gonna... I think the first part of this is just, like, introducing what exactly studio culture is and what the project is, so...
Okay. Does he say where he goes to school?
At some point. I don't really remember where. I think it's a bit later on. But he goes to Oklahoma State University. Scott is great. He was very willing to do this, which I am very thankful for.
So the Learning and Teaching Culture Policy Project is something that I'm working on with our national president, Sarah Curry. Basically, the idea behind the project is to study the strengths and weaknesses of studio culture policies, how they're impacting schools, how they impact students in their day-to-day lives, and to help to strengthen that and develop it further. So studio culture policies were started around the year 2000 in response just to the kind of unhealthy habits that were gripping architectural education as a whole, like lack of sleep, not eating enough, just as a response, as a way to encourage healthy habits in architecture school and ensure that we're getting the most from school, but at the same time maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, so that's like the first part of what he was talking about. I think obviously it's what he said. It's a culture policy. A studio culture policy is a policy for each individual school, typically, that kind of defines the student-school relationship.
Yep.
In short terms.
The important thing is it's an accreditation requirement.
Yes. Not recently. I guess of 2000, right? I don't know. That's when it started.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a thing like 20 years ago. So when some of our professors went to school...
Wow, 2000 was 20 years ago, almost.
Please don't say things like that. Right. When some of our professors were in school, it was not a thing.
Yeah,
so it's recent in that
sense. I've talked to a lot of professors that have said that that's.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just assumed it was always a thing, but a couple of them were pretty surprised, and pleasantly so. But they were like, studio culture was not a concept when I was in school. So, it's new in that sense, and I think the push, that kind of the studio culture policy project is bringing about is like even newer in terms of just trying to be more intentional about. Do people know that it's a thing? Do people know that, and by people I mean students and faculty, but do students know that they can leverage it to create more positive culture for themselves?
Yeah, but in an efficient way, right? Yes. Like, it's supposed to be collaborative. It's not just it's not one-sided.
Yeah,
it's not just
not
students
like
defining what they want. Yeah, the finger-pointing part is the really important thing that you have to remember, is like, that's not what it's meant for. It's meant to define a positive culture. Obviously, like, we can say it as much as we want. Maybe it doesn't do that in reality, and that's what the whole project is about. He also talks a little bit later about what exactly they're trying to change it into. So I'll just summarize that real quick so we don't play the entirety of the clip, because Scott, you recorded a really long clip. But no, it's great. It started out as the term studio culture policy, right? But they're kind of considering changing that and expanding that to a different name, which is called the Learning and Teaching Culture Policy.
LTC.
Yeah. The main reason being that I think they're trying to expand to, other parts of architecture school and not just studio, because obviously studio is not everything. Nowadays, at least, I don't know about back then, but classes have really, changed a lot and really defined themselves differently. So that's a really big part of it. It's essentially, an agreement between students and faculty to maintain, healthy lifestyles, etc. But it's supposed to be collaborative. So,
which means that everybody's like at the table.
Yeah. Everyone's at the table. And this is where Scott and Sarah really come in on the project, is talking about the process of exactly how the project is going. Because I think a lot of people are curious, because at least I was really hesitant about the idea of a universal studio culture policy, or learning and teaching culture policy, I guess. Just because I was worried about the uniqueness of every school. Yeah. And I think they try to address that a little bit. But here, I'm going to play this next, another part of the clip. I think it's this part.
Half listen.
Nope.
Ignore that first
part. So in terms of what we're doing with the project itself, at the moment we're really gathering research on past studio culture policies. So we have a folder that we're piling up these studio culture policies, and we're going to go over them and see their strengths and weaknesses, and talk to students at the schools that have these policies, and see what they think the policy has done positively, or what they think that it should do more, or if they think maybe even that it hasn't done anything at all. Some people might not even know that studio culture policies exist, and that's something that we definitely want to change. So at the moment we're gathering those and doing research. An important thing about studio culture policies is that it's an effort between a lot of different people, kind of over a long period of time. You can't really just take a couple of weeks and two people and write a studio culture policy that's effective. You need a lot of people's opinions. You need to have a process that you go through. And a big part of that process is what we call town hall meetings. So that's just a gathering of students and potentially of faculty to discuss issues within architecture school, be that about healthy habits or about the curriculum, or about sustainability, or really anything that isn't a school policy that maybe should be.
Okay, so that was, I guess, the explanation of, like, the process of what they're doing, as far as I can tell.
I think that was great.
Yeah, I mean, everything he said was, like, I mean, I agree
He
with
said some of
everything
my
he
favorite words. Town hall, love
Town hall.
those. We have those all
There's
every
like
year.
AIAS buzzwords, like town hall, collaboration. That's, like, really negative.
Yeah.
But, it's like, these things won't happen without, like, town halls and, like, collaboration. And like he said, it is a long process. It's not like a two-person thing. Like, you need input. Like we were saying earlier, 200 survey responses is better than 20, right?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think I really appreciate that he acknowledged kind of the time factor, because and again, I mean, these are all things on paper that don't necessarily always happen, but NAB does require you to update your studio culture policy.
Yeah, or they at least ask you about it when they do reaccreditation.
Yes.
And typically they ask who...
When it was...
When it was last updated, who kind of works on that.
And students...
Typically that's AIAS,
right,
if there's a chapter at that school.
Or some group of students.
Yeah.
But yeah, often the AIAS chapter will kind of take that on. So we've been quote unquote, updating our studio culture policy every year
at Carnegie Mellon,
at CMU. But like Scott said, I mean, it's taken a long time, I think, to come to a place this year where we put in some changes that were truly, like, meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that, the year before this or a couple years before, the leadership was unaware. I mean, in many ways, the only reason I think we were able to draft the current policy is because we learned so much from our past students about what needs to be different, potentially.
Yeah, there's definitely just been a bigger spotlight on it recently, and I think that's why, obviously, like, Scott, he talks a little bit about how he did this at Oklahoma State, similar to how we did at Town Hall, talking to faculty. He actually brought it to faculty and administration and like discussed it with them more directly. We didn't end up doing that because of time constraints, but I think
it's one of those things that I think we have to learn how to do that too, right? Is like, how do you say, okay, I know you have a lot of classes you teach and a lot is going on, but you need to be at this table with me because I really want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and the hope is that once, this student culture project, or I guess learning and teaching culture, I keep calling it the wrong thing, learning and teaching culture policy project is put into effect, a lot of school administrations will start taking it more seriously. Yeah. Because, I mean, it provides a legitimacy, as bad as it is. Like, there's a lot of...
Well, it's backed by NAB.
Yeah,
right?
it's backed
coming
by NAB.
At the time of the ARF. It's like, timing is a lot of things, which is also why, like, you have to kind of keep pushing at something until everything kind of aligns, and then you can really kind of ride the wave. But...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, like, time, like you're saying, timing. Scott also talks about the future, or I guess the next project steps in terms of like the overall goal. The overall goal is to have a not a like universal policy, I would say. It's more to have a model that other schools can build upon and then interpret based on their own unique factors. Because, I mean, the committee and no one really wants like a universal policy to be like pushed on anyone, right?
Well, because you don't want to kind of like dilute any individual school's culture.
So the committee or the Scott and Sarah, I guess, I don't know who else is on the committee, but
I think it's just they're heading it. So.
Okay, they're just really trying to push the flexibility of it, I think. Yeah. And this is another example, I guess, of how you can get involved in tangible activism through this effort. They're going to have a town hall at Forum, I believe. Yes. This is the first I've heard of it, but...
I think that's all still in the works, but look out for something at Forum. It's the bottom line.
I think, okay, Scott will talk a little bit about it. This is the last clip I'm going to play from Scott. Sorry, Scott, but 9 minutes is a really long clip, so we're cutting it down a little bit, so...
this year at Forum in Toronto, our goal is to have a town hall meeting that anyone at Forum can attend. So that will be really interesting because it won't just be a specific school having a town hall. It's students from all over the nation having a town hall to discuss what studio culture looks like on a national level. And it's not going to be simple because every school has a completely different culture. And so coming together and discussing those as a group can give us some great insights into what we should be doing better, what some schools do that other schools don't do. But again, every school is so different that there's not one solution for all of them, and they all, in the end, we'll all need to work out our own school's culture and help to strengthen that, because only the students that attend those schools can fully know the culture of their own school. But the town hall meeting at Forum is something that I'm really excited about. Just having that discussion. It's a completely open forum at Forum. But it'll be really interesting, and I hope that it'll turn up some great insights and points that we need to address.
Okay. Yeah, +1 to lliterally everything. Also,
Scott is great.
Scott is great.
He's the best.
Looking forward to seeing you again, Scott. Anyway, so yeah, I said this before, but he talks a little bit after that about his experiences at Oklahoma State. Another person that we also reached out to was someone in the Midwest Quad, Amber from Kent State.
Amber Kustaborder.
Yeah, Amber Kustaborder.
I'm whispering because I'm not entirely certain I say her last name correctly.
I'm really sorry.
I'm sorry, Amber.
Yeah, but she, at least Kent State, it just recently did a whole workshop regarding...
I think Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Like, so today is Friday, yeah, so 3 days ago.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. Good timing. I think, well, the reason why they did it, and I think a lot of other chapters actually in the Midwest are doing it this week, or this past week.
Oh, yes.
Because it was the Midwest Quad's...
Health and
Wellness Week, which related pretty heavily to the idea of the policy. So, oh, there's an airplane.
Can they hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it on the headphones.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. A loud one. Normally they're not that loud. Anyway, so since this week was Midwest Quad Health and Wellness Week, they decided to do a review of the college's learning and teaching culture policy. So they're going by the newer name. And I'll just kind of go, like, paraphrase what she said, but they hosted a learning and teaching culture review night, which was attended by both students and professors. So that's really, really great. That's like a really great step forward. And throughout this, they did an online survey, and hoping to take this data and comments and compiling to give to the program director. I think the program of their school, I'm assuming is what she means.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. And then kind of reviewing the policy this year as a college and not just as, AIAS. So
yes.
I think that's a really great part of it. Not to, like, repeat my words again, but, like, obviously... two people can't do it, right? Like,
or even just AIAS can't do it. I think sometimes it makes sense that, certain events or programming are geared towards members and so on and so forth. But studio culture is, as Scott was talking about, it's about students like from all over the nation coming together. And so that's where I think AIAS has the role more of facilitator and student representative, which is like kind of the point of the organization. And so that would really be like, it would be a shame to not open that up to basically
and I think
anyone.
Their goal, as far as I can tell, is to open up these leading workshops to get student feedback as well as faculty and administration, so that it's more collaborative and inclusive, because I think a lot of at least for us, I just said at least twice, at least for us, the rewrite CMU, sorry.
Okay.
The rewrite included a little bit more of like faculty student relations, and I think that's going to be a really common
like critical component
for every single chapter that might be reconsidering this, because it's just something that's not always well established.
Well, there isn't always necessarily a baseline, and I think it goes both ways. At least I personally, and I'm sure you too, I think speaking for the both of us, a good lesson that came out of this for us was that
our most recent one.
Yeah.
Which was this, like, early fall.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was like first half of September.
Yeah.
Because we had a NAB visit September 14th, I think. So.
Yeah.
So I think a key thing is, you know, as students, we're more keen to establish a baseline for how we would like faculty to engage with us. But the reciprocal component of that relationship is equally important for us as students to agree collectively that, you know, it's little things, but like we must arrive, you know, in studio on time. During studio time, we're there and we're engaged, and we're not kind of, you can have your crit at 2 p.m., but studio is from 1:30 to 4:30, and so you should be there unless you kind of are excused or something like that. And so the same kind of maybe, or like whatever appropriate versions of expectations that apply to faculty in terms of respect in particular should apply to students as well. So.
Yeah, it's like we were saying, like, at the very beginning, like, this shouldn't be a one-way street. Like, it shouldn't be pointing fingers. I think a lot of people are, at least when we first talked about studio culture way back, like a couple years ago in the national level, people were thinking about
that was this past December.
Was it this?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Seattle, yeah.
People were kind of thinking about this a bit more surface level,
Sure.
but I think a lot of people nowadays are understanding the value of it at a deeper level. So that's the end goal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's another form of tangible advocacy.
Honestly, town halls are such a great and important part.
It really is.
I just like fist bumped the air. I'm very excited about town halls.
You're so tired, you like fist bumped it like so weakly.
You know what? It's the thought that counts.
Yeah.
I forget. Oh yes. So town halls are such a cool thing, and honestly, maybe we can just do a whole other episode on like town halls. Or,
I think we should.
You know, see what happens at Forum and then like reflect on that, because I don't think like by any means we're experts.
No, but we have experience.
And so do a couple of few other chapters. I mean, you know, Scott, I'm sure has a lot of feedback and kind of like reflection on how they did their town hall.
Every school is going to be different.
Yeah, and people, I think the interesting thing is people do those things. They tap into those kind of classic means of gathering information and engaging community and so on and so forth without necessarily realizing that that's what they're doing. So you might have held a town hall, even if it's like virtual.
Yeah.
Just by like asking for reacts and comments and such things. And of course that's like getting, you know, the term becomes pretty loose then. But the point is there's a lot of way to like generate and like gather public opinion.
Yeah. Nowadays there's even more.
So, just don't use Google Forms. Everything else is okay.
Or any sort of forms.
SurveyMonkey doesn't really work. SurveyMonkey died a long time ago.
My aunt works at SurveyMonkey.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I mean, she still has great things to do. Just saying nobody feels them out.
All right. Well, I think that should be good. We're at like a little over 40 minutes.
All right. Did we want to ask people to do the thing?
What thing? I mean, if you have any forms of tangible advocacy, is this what you
things that you do as students. So if you like, whether you rewrote your studio culture policy or you're doing town halls, or even if it's not as like deeply embedded in your AIAS culture, but it's part of the way your student body works. So like if you have a student government or like an advisory group,
or if you're part of student government, some
student representative situation, like people have like year reps and things like that, and maybe that's the body that starts to take on studio culture policy rewrites and things like that. So
I think it's interesting research to
and we're curious to hear how different people do things, and so that we can share all of your experiences with like the wider group of listeners. double digits.
When we become rich and famous, then we can like look back on this. Double digits.
We started out in Selena's bedroom on the floor.
Anyways, thank you guys.
But let us wait. Where do they tell us their stuff? Where do they share
just you can DM us on our Instagram at it's not my Instagram, but it's the AIAS Advocacy Instagram. The handle is at AIAS_advocacy. DM us there, or you can reach out to me on Slack or Find me on Google. I don't know.
On
I'm sure
Facebook,
you can figure it out.
on LinkedIn.
Oh my god, LinkedIn. That's such a social media site now. I can't believe that's actually a thing.
Next episode.
Yeah, next episode. Okay, all right. Thanks, guys. Bye. This is
Bye.
been Selena, and this is Chitika. Bye.